Long before the age of the Buddha we know, long before Gotama walked the forests of ancient India, there existed another world, another era, another humanity entirely. This was not simply a different time, but a different stage of the universe itself, a period remembered in the Pāli Canon as an age of purity, balance, and astonishing longevity. In this distant epoch, long before any civilization we can trace in archaeology or myth, the Buddha Vipassī appeared. To understand him is to step into a cosmos that no longer exists, a golden age when the very conditions of life shaped beings who were unlike anything we can imagine today. The scriptures describe that during the era of Vipassī, human life reached spans of 80,000 years. These were not fragile bodies that aged and withered within decades, these were long-lived beings whose lives unfolded like the great cycles of stars. With bodies towering 60 cubits high, approximately 27 to 30 meters, humans of that age experienced a world that was vast, slow-moving, and serene. Their minds were clearer, their desires subtler, their societies more harmonious. They lived among endless groves of flowering trees, crystal-clear rivers, and landscapes untouched by conflict or scarcity. Hunger was mild, the climate was gentle, and the world itself seemed designed for peaceful contemplation. According to the ancient texts, the moral purity of beings in that era shaped the very fabric of their environment. When greed, hatred, and delusion are weak in the hearts of beings, nature reflects their clarity. Thus the world of Vipassī's time was lush and balanced, governed by rhythms of harmony rather than exploitation. Life moved slowly, centuries passed as gracefully as seasons do today. Knowledge was passed down carefully, not forgotten quickly. Communities lived with little conflict, and rulers practiced justice rather than domination. It was said that in those days, the earth provided without force, rain fell in moderation, and sickness was almost unknown. But this was not a paradise in the sense of perfection. Even in this golden age, the law of impermanence reigned. Mountains eroded, bodies changed, and lives, however long, still ended. People aged slowly, but they aged, they enjoyed beauty, but it faded, they lived long, but not forever. And so, even across 80 millennia of life, the great questions remained: what lies beneath existence? What is the root of suffering? What is the nature of reality? The appearance of a Buddha in such an age was considered more possible because the minds of beings were less clouded. When the world declines, when lifespan shrinks and violence spreads, wisdom becomes harder to receive. But in the age of Vipassī, the human heart was like a still lake, undisturbed, reflective, ready to see truth when it was revealed. Thus, the universe prepared itself for the emergence of a fully enlightened one. To open this story, imagine an earth not bound by our historical memory but woven into cosmic time. Imagine towering human figures, luminous in presence, walking across landscapes untouched by pollution or war. Imagine a society of clarity, where life is long enough for wisdom to mature naturally. This is the world into which Vipassī Buddha was born. It is a world profoundly different from ours, yet governed by the same laws of nature, impermanence, cause and effect, and the inner workings of the mind. In telling the story of Vipassī, we are not simply exploring ancient myth. We are looking into a mirror held up by the Buddhist tradition, reflecting a timeless truth, that the universe changes in vast cycles, that worlds rise and fall, that human beings evolve and decline, and that conditions for awakening are rare and precious. The age of Vipassī is gone, dissolving into the depths of cosmic time, but through these teachings, we can still sense it, a distant echo of a world where wisdom could flourish as naturally as flowers blooming in endless forests. And from this vast, luminous era, the story of the Buddha Vipassī begins. In that ancient, radiant world, where lifespans stretched across the ages and human beings stood tall like living monuments, there came a moment when the balance of the universe shifted. A child was about to be born, not merely as another figure in the long line of noble rulers, but as one destined to reshape the destiny of an entire era. His name would one day be known as Vipassī, the one who sees clearly, but his story began in the quiet chambers of a royal palace, surrounded by a kingdom whose prosperity and harmony reflected the purity of the age. His father was King Banduma, sovereign of Bandhumati, the great capital of that distant world. Unlike the monarchs of later eras, who often ruled through conquest or fear, the kings of Vipassī's time governed through benevolence, fairness, and deep understanding of natural law. Their rule was an extension of the moral clarity that permeated the hearts of their people. They did not need armies to maintain peace. Peace was woven into the very structure of society. Queen Bandhumati, his mother, was known for her calm demeanor and boundless compassion. It was said that her presence alone could soothe disputes and bring harmony wherever she walked. When the queen conceived, signs began to appear throughout the kingdom, omens described in the old texts as luminous and auspicious. Bright lights shimmered in the night sky, trees blossomed out of season, and the people felt an unusual sense of ease that seemed to ripple through their minds. The sages of the time, skilled in interpreting the subtle shifts of nature, declared that these signs heralded the birth of an extraordinary being. Whispers spread across the city, a great heir was coming, one whose life would shape the destiny of countless generations. On the day of his birth, the palace was filled with a gentle radiance. The newborn prince's body emitted a soft glow, as though reflecting the clarity of his mind even in infancy. When the royal astrologers and wise ascetics examined him, they agreed unanimously on what the signs revealed. There were 8 great predictions, all pointing toward 2 possible destinies. If he remained in the household life, he would grow into a Cakkavatti, a wheel-turning monarch who would govern the world with unparalleled wisdom and justice. But if he left the palace to seek the truth, he would become a fully enlightened Buddha, a teacher who reveals the path to liberation. King Banduma, like so many fathers before and after him, wished for his son to enjoy the worldly life, to rule the kingdom, and to inherit a legacy of peace. And so the king resolved to surround the young prince with everything delightful, everything comforting, everything that might keep him anchored to palace life. 3 great palaces were built for him, one for each of the 3 seasons of that age. They were not mere buildings but entire worlds crafted to shield him from suffering. Halls lined with precious jewels, gardens blooming in perfect symmetry, and attendants devoted entirely to his well-being. Yet even amidst such abundance, even with centuries of luxurious life laid out before him, the young Vipassī displayed a temperament unlike ordinary princes. His mind was calm, reflective, unusually sensitive to the world around him. While others indulged in pleasures, he observed their fleeting nature. While others became absorbed in comfort, he sensed a subtle incompleteness. Even in childhood, he possessed the serene gaze that would one day give him his name, the gaze of one who sees not just the surface of things but the truth beneath them. As he grew into a tall, radiant young man, the people adored him. His wisdom was evident even in youth. His compassion was effortless, his presence brought peace to anyone who approached him. Royal tutors taught him arts, sciences, governance, and philosophy, yet again and again, they were astonished by how quickly he grasped every lesson. Knowledge came to him naturally, as though awakening from a memory rather than being learned anew. Still, despite the comfort of palace life and the devotion of his parents, something stirred inside him, an unspoken question, a quiet restlessness. He walked through the gardens, gazing at the trees, the rivers, the expansive sky, and felt an inner whisper that told him there was something deeper he needed to understand. The world around him was beautiful, but beauty alone could not silence the subtle sense that something essential lay hidden just beyond the reach of ordinary perception. This gentle unease, this intuitive recognition of life's deeper truth, would eventually guide him toward the greatest journey of his era. But for now, the young Vipassī lived within the palace walls, unaware that destiny was already moving around him, preparing the conditions for him to encounter the truths that would change his life, and the world, forever. The life of Prince Vipassī unfolded in long, graceful centuries, wrapped in comfort, beauty, and silence. Within the palace walls, time seemed gentle, almost motionless. The king and queen ensured that nothing troubling ever reached their son's eyes. Musicians played soft melodies, gardens bloomed endlessly, and attendants shielded him from anything that might disturb his serene world. But even the longest of lives cannot remain untouched by truth forever. And so the universe began arranging a series of encounters, simple, ordinary in appearance, yet powerful enough to shatter the illusion of perfection and awaken a destiny that stretched across the ages. One day, after hundreds of years of secluded living, the young prince expressed a desire to leave the palace grounds. His father hesitated, fearing the predictions of the sages. But refusing his son's request might raise even more suspicion, so he ordered the attendants to prepare a flawless route. The roads were swept, decorated, cleared of anything unpleasant. Flowers were scattered along the path, musicians placed at intervals to greet the prince with joyful songs. Those who were old or sick were gently moved aside, hidden from sight. It was an attempt to preserve the illusion of eternal youth, a fragile attempt against the power of reality. Yet truth finds its way, even in the most carefully controlled world. As Vipassī's majestic chariot rolled through the city, a figure appeared along the roadside, stooped, trembling, with hair faded like withered grass. His back was bent, his skin loose and wrinkled. The prince stared in confusion. Never before had he seen such a sight. He asked the charioteer, "What is this being? Why is he so different from others?" The charioteer, unable to lie, explained gently, "This, my prince, is an old man. All living beings, if they live long enough, grow old. Their strength fades. Their beauty disappears. Their bodies decline." Vipassī listened in silence, his mind pierced by a truth that no palace wall could conceal. He realized that even in a world of abundance, no one can escape time. When he returned to the palace, he walked through the halls with a different gaze, one not of admiration but of questioning. For the first time, he saw fragility hidden beneath beauty. Yet his father believed the plan had worked and allowed him to go out once more, hoping the next excursion would restore the prince's joy. But on the second journey, another revelation awaited him. The chariot passed a man lying on the ground, shaking uncontrollably. His face pale, breath uneven. The prince again asked, "What is the matter with this man? Why does he suffer so?" And the charioteer replied, "My prince, he is sick. Illness comes to all beings. Even those who are young and strong can fall into pain and weakness. None can prevent it." Vipassī felt something shift deep inside him. For the first time in his long life, he understood the vulnerability of the human body. Illness was not rare, not confined to the unfortunate, it was universal. He realized that no amount of luxury or protection could keep sickness away forever. Days passed in contemplation, but the universe was not finished revealing its truths. On a third excursion, the prince's chariot came upon a silent procession. People walked slowly, carrying a body wrapped in cloth. The air was heavy with sorrow. The prince watched in stillness and asked what this strange ritual meant. The charioteer's voice was soft as he explained. "This is death, my prince. All who are born must eventually die. No being, no matter how powerful, can escape this fate." Vipassī felt a deep tremor within his heart. Death, final, irreversible, unavoidable, was the truth he had never been allowed to see. For beings who lived 80,000 years, death might seem distant, but it was no less certain. And in that realization, the fragile foundation of his life of pleasure began to crumble. The prince returned to the palace deeply shaken, no longer able to find comfort in music or gardens. For the first time, he saw the truth of existence, that no matter how long life may be, it is still bound by suffering, still shaped by impermanence, still vulnerable to loss. His father tried to distract him with festivals and pleasures, but none could silence the questions rising in Vipassī's mind. Then came the fourth and final encounter, the one that transformed confusion into clarity. On his next journey, the prince saw a serene figure dressed in simple robes, walking with a calm, unshakable presence. His face was peaceful, his steps deliberate, his mind seemingly untouched by the chaos of the world. Vipassī asked, "Who is this man who walks with such dignity and stillness?" The charioteer replied, "My prince, this is a samana, an ascetic. He has left behind worldly pleasures to seek the end of suffering. He searches for the truth beyond birth and death." In that moment, Vipassī felt something awaken within him, something ancient, something powerful, something aligned with his deepest nature. It was as if he recognized the ascetic's path as his own, as if the universe had whispered a reminder of a destiny he had carried across countless lifetimes. The suffering he had witnessed was no longer a source of fear but a doorway to purpose. If old age, sickness, and death were unavoidable, then the only true question was how to transcend them. Returning to the palace. For the final time, Vipassī walked through the grand halls and realized that no amount of pleasure could hide the truth he had now seen. His long life, his vast kingdom, his unimaginable comfort, all were temporary. All would decay. All would vanish. And within that realization, the seed of renunciation blossomed. He understood that he must search for the profound truth hidden beneath the cycles of life and death. The illusions of the palace had fallen away, and the path of a Buddha had begun. When the seed of renunciation finally took root in Vipassī's heart, it grew with a quiet but unstoppable force. No resistance from the palace, no comfort or pleasure, could soften its power. One night, after long contemplation and a silent farewell to the life he once knew, the prince stepped out of the royal residence. The palaces, gleaming towers of luxury built to protect him from truth, faded behind him as he walked into the vastness of the ancient world. He renounced not only comfort, but the illusion that any form of worldly life, no matter how refined, could offer lasting peace. Thus began his journey into the wilderness, a journey that would stretch across ages and reshape the destiny of his era. The forests of that ancient age were unlike the forests of today. They were vast, deep, and almost timeless. Giant trees rose hundreds of feet into the sky, their branches shading valleys untouched by human ambition. Rivers wound through the land like silver serpents, and the air was rich with the scent of resin and blooming flowers. Vipassī traveled through these landscapes with the calmness of someone who had already stepped beyond the world he had known. His height, his luminous presence, and his serene bearing made him appear almost otherworldly, yet his mind was focused on a single truth, the nature of suffering and the way beyond it. He practiced austerities for a long period, exploring the limits of physical endurance. Like so many who sought liberation before and after him, he pushed his body to extremes, fasting, holding difficult postures, reducing sleep, and enduring the harsh elements. For beings with lifespans of 80,000 years, such practices stretched across what would be centuries today. And yet, with all the effort, all the pain, Vipassī realized what many seekers eventually understand: tormenting the body does not free the mind. Suffering cannot be overcome by creating more suffering. Darkness cannot be dispelled by plunging deeper into darkness. This realization marked a pivotal turn. Vipassī abandoned the path of self-mortification and sought instead a way of balance, a way that did not indulge desire but also did not destroy the body, meant to carry the mind toward awakening. This insight into the middle way blossomed within him naturally, like a truth he had always known, but only now remembered. And so he sat beneath a mighty Pāṭali tree, a rosewood giant whose roots had sunk deep into the earth for thousands of years. Its branches extended like protective arms, its leaves shimmering in the soft light of dawn. Here, Vipassī resolved not to rise until he understood the truth that liberated all Buddhas of the past and all Buddhas yet to come. The night that followed was long, not in hours, but in the depth of its unfolding. Vipassī's meditation sank into profound stillness, deeper than anything he had ever experienced. The world around him grew quiet, even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. In the first watch of the night, his mind turned inward with vast clarity. He saw his past lives stretching backwards like an endless river, each existence linked to the next through intentions, actions, and the law of cause and effect. He saw joy and sorrow, birth and death, triumph and loss, all woven into a tapestry of countless rebirths. In the second watch, his vision expanded outward. He saw the passing of beings according to their actions, how wholesome deeds led to fortunate rebirths, how unwholesome deeds led to realms of suffering. He saw the moral structure of the cosmos not as a doctrine but as direct, undeniable reality. Worlds rose and fell, species appeared and vanished, but the law of karma remained constant, governing every moment with precision. And then came the final watch of the night. Vipassī turned his mind to the deepest question, the origin of suffering. He traced the chain of dependent origination backward and forward, seeing with perfect clarity how ignorance gives rise to formations, how consciousness flows into name and form, how craving binds beings to existence, and how clinging sustains the cycle of rebirth. In a single, world-shattering moment, he understood the pattern of existence as clearly as one sees a reflection in polished crystal. When this understanding reached its peak, the final bonds of ignorance dissolved. The light of awakening, described in the ancient texts as radiating across 10,000 world systems, unfolded from within him. At that moment, Vipassī became a Sammasambuddha, a fully enlightened one, a Buddha whose wisdom arises without any teacher. The darkness of countless lifetimes vanished, leaving only the serene brilliance of liberation. Under the Pāṭali Tree, the world seemed to pause. The earth felt lighter, the air clearer, as if nature itself recognized the birth of a Buddha. Vipassī sat unmoving, but his presence illuminated the forest like a dawn spreading over the horizon. He had seen the truth that lies beneath all forms, the truth that frees beings from sorrow, the truth that is eternally available yet rarely realized. And so, beneath that ancient tree in a world now lost to time, the first Buddha of that distant age awakened. His journey from prince to ascetic to enlightened one was complete. But his mission, the great turning of the Wheel of Dhamma, was only about to begin. After his awakening beneath the majestic Pāṭali Tree, Vipassī Buddha remained in deep contemplation, reflecting on the profound truths he had realized. For 7 days he sat silently, absorbed in the clarity of his own mind, fully aware of the intricate patterns of existence, the cycle of birth and death, and the way to liberation. Although his understanding was complete, he hesitated. Could the beings of his age, even with their immense lifespan and towering stature, truly comprehend the Dhamma he had discovered? The question lingered like a gentle breeze, carrying both patience and purpose across the vast, quiet forests. On the 7th day, the heavens themselves seemed to lean closer. Devas and Brahmas, radiant celestial beings, approached the Buddha and requested him to teach. O fully enlightened one, they said, you have seen the truth beyond all suffering. Share it, so that countless beings may awaken as you have. And so Vipassī accepted the call, knowing that the time had come to turn the first wheel of the Dhamma in this world. He rose, calm and radiant, and began to walk through the forests toward the gathering of beings ready to hear the truth. The first to approach were Kanda and Tissa, 2 noble aspirants, whose hearts had long been inclined toward renunciation. They stood before the Buddha with reverence, eager yet humble, waiting for the words that would illuminate the path beyond the illusions of life. Vipassī gazed at them with a serene intensity, seeing directly into the currents of their minds, recognizing both their potential and their readiness. Then he spoke, not with extravagance, not with elaborate ornamentation, but with precision and clarity. Every word resonated like a bell, cutting through delusion, awakening insight. He taught the fundamental truths, the inevitability of suffering, the impermanence of all conditioned things, the law of cause and effect, and the path that leads beyond craving and clinging. Kanda and Tissa listened deeply, their hearts opening, their minds awakening. By the end of the discourse, both had attained the fruit of arahantship, becoming the first enlightened disciples of Vipassī Buddha. Word spread quickly among the beings of that age, whose lives were long, their bodies grand, and their minds unusually receptive. They gathered in multitudes, surrounding the Buddha, listening to his teachings with rapt attention. The Dhamma flowed effortlessly from Vipassī, yet each teaching was profound, tailored to the readiness of the listener, illuminating both the vast cosmic law and the intimate workings of the mind. He taught about dependent origination, revealing how every phenomenon arises in dependence upon causes and conditions, how ignorance fuels suffering, and how insight dissolves its roots. He explained the Four Noble Truths with clarity that transcended time, showing the way to liberation through understanding, ethical conduct, and disciplined practice. The first saga of that age formed around Vipassī Buddha. Monks and nuns of enormous stature, their minds as expansive as the forests themselves, left behind worldly life to follow the path he had revealed. They meditated beneath the same Pāṭali Tree, traveled across the vast kingdoms, and helped spread the Dhamma to every corner of that distant world. Unlike the struggles and delays often seen in later eras, the beings of Vipassī's time comprehended the teachings swiftly, their innate purity allowing them to realize liberation in relatively few lifetimes, even as centuries passed and the physical forms of these beings eventually faded from the world, the impact of Vipassī's teachings endured. The Buddha's first turning of the Wheel of Dhamma set the precedent for all future Buddhas. His enlightenment and his teachings demonstrated that even in a world of towering giants and lifespans measured in millennia, the ultimate liberation depended not on external conditions, but on the clarity of understanding, the depth of insight, and the unwavering practice of truth. The era of Vipassī is now long gone, its forests vanished, its kingdoms reduced to memory, and its inhabitants returned to the cycles of birth and death. Yet the echoes of that time remain, preserved in the texts and teachings that recount his life. The story reminds us that no matter how favorable or hostile the conditions of a world may be, the path to awakening is universal. Even in the most perfect world, wisdom is necessary. Even in the longest life, liberation is not automatic. Vipassī Buddha's awakening and his first teachings illuminate the timeless truth that the Dhamma is eternal, waiting for those who are ready to hear, see, and understand. In this way, the first wheel of the Dhamma turned in an age long forgotten, and the seed of enlightenment was planted, destined to echo through the countless ages that would follow.